A single decision made inside quiet European conference rooms sends shockwaves through global markets, pushing the world's energy system to the brink. And suddenly, every nation realizes that one move against Russian oil could tip the entire global economy into chaos. Oil is not just a commodity, it is the bloodstream of the global system. And today, the EU and the G7 are preparing to cut one of its main arteries. Their plan to block maritime services for Russian oil exports may look like a sanction, but in reality, it is a geopolitical weapon, one with the power to reshape alliances, topple economies, and ignite new conflicts. This is the story of why the world is now standing on the edge of an oil shock, how this blockade threatens global stability, and why the consequences will reach far beyond Europe or Russia. The European Union and the G7 have reached a turning point. After years of sanctions, restrictions, and price caps, they are now preparing the most aggressive measure yet: a full ban on all maritime logistics for Russian oil exports. This includes Western insurance, shipping companies, port access, cargo management, and even secondary market penalties. This isn't just a new sanction. It is the severing of the logistical backbone that the Russian oil industry relies on. Because even though Russia has found new buyers in India, China, Turkey, and Southeast Asia, the shipping system they depend on still flows through Western-controlled arteries. 90% of the world's tanker fleet depends on Western insurance, Western financing, Western classification societies, and Western port registrations. And now the EU and the G7 want to shut those doors. To understand why this decision is happening now, we must zoom out. Russia's war in Ukraine has reached a phase where Western governments believe the Kremlin's economy is still surviving. Oil revenue continues to fund the war. The ruble has weakened, but it has not collapsed. And Moscow's export system has adapted far better than many expected. So Europe is asking itself a question. If sanctions didn't stop Russia, what will? Their answer? A direct attack on Russia's ability to move oil, not just sell it. This reflects a deeper Western strategy: exhaust Russia's war financing, reduce its geopolitical influence in Asia, limit its leverage over energy markets, and test China and India's willingness to defy the West. Because this is not just about the war. It is about the emerging struggle over who controls global trade flows in a multipolar world. Russia did not wait. The moment the first hints of a maritime ban appeared, Moscow moved quickly. It began expanding a shadow fleet, hundreds of old, unregulated tankers registered under Liberia, Panama, Gabon, Cameroon, and the Seychelles. It developed state-backed marine insurance programs to bypass Western firms. It strengthened ties with China, India, Turkey, and the Gulf. It redirected oil through the Arctic, across the Indian Ocean, and toward the Northern Sea route. Russia is adapting, but the EU G7 blockade is designed to make adaptation painful, slow, and expensive. A maritime ban doesn't just hurt Russia. It shakes the global energy system itself. When up to 8 million barrels per day face logistical restrictions, markets panic, speculation rises, supplies tighten. Prices climb not gradually, but violently. A $10 to $20 jump in oil prices in a matter of days is completely possible. In extreme scenarios, we could see oil hitting $120 to $140 per barrel. High oil prices trigger inflation. Inflation increases shipping costs. Expensive shipping makes everything else more expensive. Nations that only recently escaped the previous inflation wave may be thrown right back into crisis. Asia faces another threat: supply instability. If Russian tankers can't move freely, refiners in India and China lose predictability, and their entire domestic energy markets are shaken. The United States faces political pressure. High fuel costs hurt elections. Sanctions that raise American gasoline prices are politically dangerous. Shipping markets too will be thrown into chaos. If a large portion of tanker fleets become sanctioned, insurance markets destabilize. Routes become risky, accidents increase, environmental dangers grow. One policy decision in Brussels can trigger consequences across the world's oceans. And then comes the military dimension. Oil funds war. Every dollar Moscow earns from oil finances, drones, missiles, ammunition, and military logistics. A hit to oil revenue is a hit to Russia's war machine. But maritime enforcement also carries the risk of confrontation. As Russia relies on ghost tankers and dark routes, NATO may begin shadowing and inspecting vessels. A misunderstanding, a collision, or an aggressive maneuver could escalate into an international crisis. The Black Sea, the Baltic, and the Arctic could become flashpoints. History warns us that oil blockades rarely end peacefully. The U.S. oil embargo on Japan in 1941 led to Pearl Harbor. The Arab oil embargo in 1973 shook the Western world into recession. Sanctions on Iran triggered economic collapse and political hardening. Russia has studied all of this, and it will respond accordingly. Economists like Yanis Varoufakis would argue that this is not only about punishing Russia, it is about controlling the future of global trade. The West fears a world where China, Russia, Iran, and other nations build parallel systems that bypass Western shipping, finance, and insurance. Because once alternative systems are established, Western dominance over global trade flows will permanently weaken. Varoufakis would warn Europe that it is gambling with its own energy stability. He would say, Russia will suffer, but the world will pay. Now, let's examine how the major players will. The United States will support Europe publicly, but behind the scenes it will work to stabilize oil prices, pressure OPEC to increase production, and use strategic reserves if necessary. Washington wants to hurt Russia without hurting American consumers. China will see opportunity. It will buy more discounted Russian oil, expand its tanker fleet, strengthen its insurance markets, and further weaken Western dominance over global shipping. India will walk a tightrope. It will not abandon Russian oil, but it will demand deeper discounts and explore new partnerships to bypass Western control. Europe risks the most. High oil prices will fuel inflation, anger the public, weaken industries, and destabilize politics. But Europe believes this blockade is strategically necessary. Russia will redirect oil, expand its shadow fleet, deepen its Asian alliances, and diversify its currency systems. The blockade will hurt but not break Moscow. The world is entering a new era. The EU G7 blockade is not just another sanction. It is the beginning of a geopolitical transformation. Western control of shipping and financial systems is fading. Eastern trade routes are rising. Parallel systems are forming. A new global split is emerging, not ideological, but logistical. Here are the predictions. Oil prices will remain volatile for 2 to 3 years. Russia will strengthen its Asian energy axis. Europe will fall into deeper energy dependence on the US, the Middle East, and North Africa. China will build a parallel maritime and insurance system. The global south will suffer the most from rising prices. And conflict at sea becomes increasingly likely as shadow fleets grow and NATO monitoring intensifies. The EU G7 maritime blockade is not simply a sanction. It is a seismic geopolitical shift, one that challenges Russia, pressures Asia, disrupts the global economy, and accelerates the breakdown of the old world order. We are entering a future where the battle for energy routes, shipping lanes, and financial systems will define global power. The world is watching, the markets are trembling, and as nations prepare for the fallout, one truth becomes clear. When the arteries of global energy are cut, the entire world feels the pain. This is the new geopolitics of oil. This is the crisis shaping the future. And this is only the beginning.